Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Look Into Bitcoin, and today we're going to be looking at whether the US markets have the biggest impact on the Bitcoin price. To do this, we'll be using a number of resources that are all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now we're just on the Bitcoin versus the S&P 500, the Dow Jones Industrial Index, Tesla, and Apple here on Look Into Bitcoin. And as you can see, there is a fairly strong correlation, especially over the past year, between Bitcoin and these other US equities. However, I think one thing that a lot of people maybe don't take fully into consideration is that there's a huge global interest in cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. And it's not just the US that provides all of the trading volume and all of the general retail and institutional interest in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. There is a big world out there, and a lot of regions are getting very much invested into the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency sector. Some reports out there try and quantify the actual interest by region in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And especially this one here shows that North America currently only accounts for around 18% of the current volume in the Bitcoin markets, which may be quite surprising to a lot of people. That's 72% of the crypto markets volume is not from North America. This is a huge amount of capital inflows and outflows that aren't coming from the region that I'm assuming most of you watching this are from. Some reports even claim that Asia currently have the largest and most influential impact on the Bitcoin price with their huge amount of trading and derivative volume. Of course, some of these reports may be a little outdated, but a lot of the facts still hold true. So I think we need to look into what markets actually do impact the Bitcoin price the most and which economies we should really look at and put our focus into, try and gain a little bit of an edge with our Bitcoin investing and analysis. So if you haven't already, I definitely recommend checking out our recent video about which economic policies impact Bitcoin the most, where we came to the conclusion that while most US economic policies don't really have any observable correlation with the Bitcoin price, the US central bank balance sheet or the Federal Reserve balance sheet and the M2 money supply do have the strongest correlation with the Bitcoin price. Now, the M2 money supply is not the most exciting metric because it's pretty much always going up. So the US central bank balance sheet is the one we'll be focusing on today. And as we can see here, we have the US central bank balance sheet here in trillions of dollars in the orange line here, and the 1 year rolling correlation between this central bank balance sheet and the Bitcoin price down here in blue. So we can see almost immediately there is quite a strong correlation between the US central bank balance sheet and the Bitcoin price. As one rises exponentially, the other usually isn't too far behind. And especially if we average this yearly correlation out to, instead of just 1 year, the entire price history of Bitcoin, we can see that this all-time correlation is a value of 0.82. Now, on a correlation scale of -1, which gives us an exact negative correlation, which means as one moves up, the other moves down, and a value of 1 indicating a perfect correlation, meaning as one moves up, the other one always moves up as well. A value of 0.82 indicates a very strong correlation. So clearly the US economy and markets do have a strong influence on the Bitcoin price. But is it the strongest influence? As we saw in the previous reports we went over, that North America currently only accounts for about 18% of the capital inflows and outflows within the cryptocurrency space. So what about other global economies? How do they impact and how do they correlate with the Bitcoin price? So I think a country a lot of people currently have their eyes on being China, especially with the conversation of the world reserve currency. Obviously, it currently sits with the US dollar and the petrodollar, but a lot of countries are actually shifting towards a Chinese yuan as the financial reserve currency of the globe. And right now we can see that the Chinese central bank balance sheet, again, has been on a pretty much exponential rise for as long as we have the data for, at least for as long as we have the Bitcoin price action. And we can see, again, there is a very strong correlation. It is, of course, cyclical. But right now there is actually not really much of an observable correlation on the year-by-year basis. But what about, again, on the all-time price action basis? What is the correlation between Bitcoin and the Chinese central bank balance sheet? Well, this figure actually currently sits at a value of 0.65. So it is less correlated, or Bitcoin is less correlated with Chinese economic policies for the time being than the US markets, which might be a little surprising, but may not be too surprising, especially given Chinese and Asian markets taking a huge interest in Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space with their huge volumes in the crypto markets. But the correlation between Bitcoin and the Chinese government and their economic policies isn't as strong in the US right now. But what about the European central bank balance sheet? How does that correlate to the Bitcoin price? So what we can pretty much immediately see is a very strong correlation, especially as it looks quite similar to the US central bank balance sheet. We can see Bitcoin's price action is actually pretty similar to this EU central bank balance sheet, and especially its substantial increases and decreases. And what we can see on the yearly basis, again, right now it's not exactly a strong correlation, but what about if we look over Bitcoin's entire price history? Well, we actually have an all-time correlation between the Bitcoin price and the EU central bank balance sheet of 0.85. This is the strongest correlation we've seen, even stronger than the correlation between the US economy. So the EU central bank balance sheet has the strongest correlation of all global central bank balance sheets with the Bitcoin price. So it really is worth paying attention to other global economies and their factors and general state of the markets, not only in the US, but around the world, because Bitcoin isn't necessarily just tied to US equities and the price movements and policies that are being implemented within the US. It's a global commodity. This is traded, invested in, and sent peer to peer all around the world. And we really need to start taking into account how the policy changes around the world have an impact on the Bitcoin price. So just to summarize, while the US economy undoubtedly has a significant impact on the Bitcoin performance, many traders and investors do not take into account other regions that also have a substantial impact on the Bitcoin price. Economies such as Europe and Asia also implement policies that can positively or negatively influence the crypto markets. And these reasons also can inject market moving volume to potentially radically change the trend of Bitcoin and other digital assets, especially as globalization really takes effect and potentially the US loses its dominance, especially as the US dollar potentially loses its number one status as the world reserve currency. It really is imperative that we start looking around the world to take into account other global policies when it comes to our Bitcoin investing and analysis. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live chats, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private TradingView scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are, if you think the US is leading the way, or do you think we're potentially seeing a shift in cryptocurrencies and the Bitcoin markets with its correlation to other global economies. As I said, let me know in the comments down below and on social media at lookintobtc. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.